my Jellyspoons, sticking around for the romance subplot. Turns out I'm actually very good at these. I never go into D&D intending to have any romance whatsoever. My characters just end up romanceable. Moxi was 16 years old when he met Sebastian. Sebastian was, I think, 3 years older, so he was 19. They were both tiefling boys, their fathers were both tiefling pirates. Moxi's father, like Canos' brethren, struck up an accord with Captain Thor, and they agreed that their 2 ships would converge and they would sail as a mini fleet for a while, and they would adventure together, they would attack together, they would share the loot, and they would just have a team up, as it were. And they both had a son, Moxi brethren, Sebastian Thor. That's how the boys met. Sebastian was a deep red tiefling like his father, bright emerald eyes, rich dark hair, beautiful. And when Moxi first met him, he felt a sudden spark of like, ooh. But he didn't really know what it was. He had only banged women. And so he sort of put it aside as like, ha, new person, cool. The boys got on like a house on fire. They were forever getting into trouble on ships, on land. They had to be pulled out of scrapes numerous times by both of their fathers. They were banned from many a tavern. It was a whole great time. They became the best of friends very quickly. So 2 successful years go by this way. The pirates split the booty and the plunder, attack and sink other ships, they fight monsters, they get loads of treasure, they do unspeakable piratical acts, and they have a tremendous time. The 2 boys are completely inseparable. They're the best of friends in the whole world. Moxi and Seb having a great time. And then it is Moxi's 18th birthday. Now, they couldn't do a great deal because they were far out at sea, so they couldn't go to land and go to a tavern or anything. So they all had a drink, they danced on the deck, that kind of thing. And then later that night, Moxi dragged Sebastian up into the crow's nest because he, in his ever so slightly tipsy way, was determined that he was going to catch a star. That's what he wanted for his birthday. And his logic was Sebastian was the taller of the 2, so he could sit on Sebastian's shoulders and catch a star. They tried to do this for a long time and failed. And eventually Sebastian just pulled Moxi down and just said, oh, for goodness sake, and just stood in front of him in the crow's nest, and they sort of drunkenly swayed on each other. And he just says, Mox, we're not going to catch a star, but I hope you've had the best birthday ever. And Mox just says, I have. It's been great. It's been great. I don't need a star. It's fine. And Sebastian just like holding his shoulder, and they're just sort of looking at each other. And they're looking at each other for just a little bit longer than they would have done. And Sebastian says, I mean, you shine bright anyway. You don't need a star. And Moxi just goes, huh. Yeah. And that was it. That was Moxi's birthday. And again, Moxi felt that spark of something. He wasn't quite sure. Wasn't quite sure what, but he was tipsy, so he wrote it off. So they carry on sailing and adventuring, fighting and swashbuckling, and then they get into another huge fight with a ship, and this is a much more powerful ship than they're used to. The 2 ships are converging, and Moxi and Seb have this thing they do where they both swing on and they see who can kill as many of the other people as possible and who can find the most plunder. This battle is all going really well, and their boys are really excited, and they find some plunder on this other ship, and they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna go get that. So they go to get it. It's like a huge treasure chest. They're dragging it back between them, and there's cannonballs flying all around them, and there's explosions, and the other ship is slowly going down. They are winning this fight. However, as the 2 boys get this huge treasure chest and they're like, oh, pulling it onto the deck of the Shade Wraith, another cannon, poof, explodes, and then all Moxi sees is just white. The smoke starts to clear and the other ship has sunk. They're winning. All the other pirates are like, yeah, victory. And Sebastian's cheering too, and he looks around for his best friend, and then all anyone can hear on both of these ships, above the hullabaloo, the cheering, the yelling, all they can hear is Captain Lycanos' brethren shout, my boy! And they all see Captain Brethren, the huge tiefling, Moxi's father, with long hair, massive, like basically think Blackbeard for Moxi's father, and he comes sprinting, and he was like at the helm fighting, and he comes sprinting down onto the deck, and you can hear doof doof thundering feet, and suddenly all the cheering stops. Moxi's father crashes onto his knees and grabs hold of his son, and Moxi's lying there and he's sort of screaming and half passed out because the cannon that had blasted so close to him and Sebastian, knocked Sebastian over and blinded Moxi for a moment, had gone straight through Moxi's right leg, and the bone was now splintered from just above the knee to all the way down to his ankle. And slowly Moxi's screams just turned to gurgling chokes, and he's lying in his dad's arms and he can't see anything. Sebastian comes sprinting over next. Right behind him is his father. Captain Thor's brought over their best medic as well. They all come tearing towards Moxi. They drop to their knees beside him and they're all looking at him going, fuck, we can't save his leg. And Moxi's father is trying to stay as hardened and composed as he possibly can, but this is his son. This is so different. And he is yelling at the medic and saying, like, save him now. And the medic is saying, it needs to come off now. We need to get his leg off. So, in a scene that is very reminiscent of Black Sails, fails. Moxi gets plied with alcohol, half passed out, tears streaming down his face. The doctor starts to saw through the little remaining bone there is in Moxi's thigh. He gets halfway through and Moxi is just screaming and thrashing so much that Moxi's dad actually has to ask Captain Thor and Sebastian to help him pin Moxi down. Sebastian takes Moxi's head and cradles him in his arms, and he's crying over him, and Moxi is slowly just losing consciousness and passing out, and Sebastian is just whispering in his ear, just don't leave me, don't leave me. Eventually the doctor gets all the way through the leg, the splintered broken bit gets completely discarded. He bandages him up, heals him the best he can. We're gonna have to get him a peg leg, but we've saved his life. It took Moxi a little while to recover from that. He wanted to be out, he wanted to be adventuring and fighting. He felt completely useless, unable to walk. Sebastian tried to teach him how to hobble and hop. He never left Moxi's side, and every day when they woke up, he would fling Moxi's arm around his shoulder and they would practice sort of hopping around the room, and Moxi was getting more and more frustrated and Sebastian was trying his best to help. But one day, Moxi's father came in with a brilliant surprise, and he'd had a custom built metal peg leg with the claw. The peg leg Moxi still has in the present day, and they fasten it on, and again Sebastian helps him and he helps steady him, and for a long time Moxi has to walk holding onto Sebastian's hand, and he's just trying to walk properly, but eventually he can walk, and then he can strut, and then he can run. And then the day comes when Moxi is up on deck and he stood at the helm next to his father and he goes, "You know I'm cooler than you now." And his dad just smiles at him. After that came Sebastian's 21st birthday, and for this they were actually in port. It was a really shitty small town. There was nothing to do. Moxi had dragged Seb off the ship and been like, right, we're gonna go to a tavern, we're gonna get you so many girls, it's gonna be amazing, I'll pay for them all, we're gonna go to a brothel, it's gonna be great. Unfortunately, when they got into the town, they realised that it was pretty much a dead zone. Nothing was happening, everywhere was shut. They went to one tavern and it was lousy, there was nobody there, they didn't even have any music playing. So the boys just got blind drunk, convinced the musicians back on the ship to strike up a jolly tune, and they danced jigs late into the night. They woke up tangled together on the deck. They had fallen over in their drunken stupor, just tangled together, and they woke up completely entangled in each other. When Moxi opened his eyes and he looked at Sebastian, his best friend, in this beam of sunlight, his face just glowing, bright emerald eyes just staring back at him, he felt that tug again. And this time he knew what it was, and he was terrified because he had never felt this way about someone before and he didn't know what to do about it. So he very tentatively just leaned in and kissed Sebastian, and immediately pulled back, sat up and went, "I am sorry." And Moxi just started walking towards the nearest thing that he could be doing. After about 10-15 minutes of coiling rope in sheer panic, Moxi hears Sebastian get up. And then he hears Sebastian start walking towards him. And then he hears Sebastian start running towards him. And Moxi turns around thinking, oh God, he's gonna punch me. And he turns around just braced and ready to be punched in the face. Like, oh, that was such a stupid thing to do. Oh my God, I think I just lost my best friend. But Sebastian is running at him, and then he just tackles him, and Moxi's thinking, oh God, as he falls back to the floor, he's thinking, oh God, we're fighting, this is it, this is the end. And then Sebastian just full on grabs his face and just kisses him back. And so that's how it happened. They were pretty much inseparable beforehand. The only thing that really changed is that every night they would either sleep together in Moxi's bunk or in Sebastian's bunk. Both of their fathers claimed that they were the first person to have called the relationship many months before it actually started happening. And so for another, I think, 3 years, the boys were together. They were in a relationship, they were together. They got matching tattoos because they developed nicknames for each other. I stole these from the song as well. Moxi called Sebastian his land Ahoy, which is a line from the Cosmo Jarvis song. But it's you, my love, you're my land Ahoy, yeah, you're my boy. Yo ho, Sebastian, let's go far away, somewhere where the captain won't be mad. Yo ho, Sebastian, I wanna love you good, and we deserve much better than we've had. Trust me to invent an entire story based on one song. Moxi had a playlist immediately as soon as I created him. That's just how I do things. I will drop his playlist in the description because who does not love a good playlist? Every character I make needs a playlist. They need a playlist and then a Pinterest board because Kat made me do that. It's Kat's fault I do Pinterest boards now, but yeah. Always, every character I have always needs a playlist, and this is the first song on Moxi's playlist. So Moxi started calling Sebastian his land Ahoy, and Sebastian started calling Moxi his horizon. So it was my land Ahoy and my horizon. That was the thing other characters had noticed. Moxi had a tattoo just over his heart that said land Ahoy. But he had always passed it off as just being, yeah, it's a pirate thing, you know, land Ahoy. It's exciting because, you know, you've been at sea for a long time. I love the sea. The sea is always my home. But, you know, you see, land Ahoy, it's a new adventure, you know. And that's how he passed it off. But it turned out actually it was the nickname of his best friend and lover. The relationship continued to grow. They said they loved each other. They had nicknames. They got matching tattoos. But then, of course, one day, Moxi awoke in his bunk on his father's ship and Sebastian was gone. And so was Captain Thor, and so was their ship. The Shade Wraith was sailing completely alone, and when Moxi ran up and asked his father what was happening, all his father would tell him was they had their heading, we had ours. We weren't going in the same direction anymore. And Moxi was heartbroken, and he never heard from Sebastian again. His father sort of had a tough love response to it and said, you know, like, just, you're still alive, I'm still alive, we're still here, we'll go on our own adventures, it'll be fine. So as a player, that was the pinpoint in his history that I had for when Moxi really turned into the charismatic sort of playboy, sleep with anyone and everyone, either flirt your way into a bed or pay for it, anything, never spend a night alone if you can help it, that kind of person that he was at present. And he'd been doing that for maybe 4 or 5 years. It had been about 5 years since he'd last seen Sebastian, and this was the turning point. He decided to shut him off. No more romance, that was ridiculous, it was a waste of time, I don't want to get hurt like that again. Okay, Moxi said to the party, so yeah, that's Sebastian, and that's who my mom wants me to kill. And the party was sort of split, and they said to him, well, do you want to? He's a pirate, maybe he's a bad person, maybe it's right that you kill him, maybe it'll be doing good, you know? But the big question seemed to be, it was, well, how do you feel, you know? And Moxi thought about it, and he said, well, I hate him. I hate him for what he did to me. So, yeah, like, I have to kill him. I promised my mom, and I need to do this so that I can become Pelos Solar. That's what I'm destined to do. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. I need to do this. And the party said, okay, well, we might not agree with you, might not understand, but okay, we're with you. We're here. Whatever you need, we're here. We'll do it. We're here with you. And the next day, they sighted the Bloody Reaver's ship, which I think was also called the Bloody Reaver. So they sighted the ship on the horizon, and Moxi panicked. I was just trying to channel this. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him for what he did. I hate him so much. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. And they got closer. Got about an hour away. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. The other ship spotted them. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. And Moxi called out to his crew and he said, wave a white flag. And he said, wave the flag so that they know that we are not attacking them. And the devils looked to their captain and he said, I need to kill him. There's no need to get into a full-on fight with them. Just put it up so they let me board so I can get to him. And the devils are okay. So the devils wave this white sheet and the two ships draw alongside each other and the party is saying like, Moxi, are you sure? Moxi, what are you doing? And Moxi just says, I hate him. I hate him. I hate him. And a gangplank is drawn across both ships and Moxi goes across and he turns to the devils and he says, you guys wait, you guys stay there, I'm gonna do this. It's me, I'm gonna do this. And he says to the party, you can come with me, but I'm not asking you to. And they say, of course we're coming, Moxi, and the party comes over the gangplank and they all go onto the other ship. And as soon as he steps foot on the other ship, Moxi's looking at all these pirates who are sort of, you know, they've got weapons, they're not quite drawn, but they're all looking sort of suspiciously at this new group of people. And Moxi just shouts once and he just says, land Ahoy. And the other pirates are sort of looking at him like, what? And his party are sort of standing back and a lot of them out of character were saying, I'm keeping an eye on the sword. And because he had daggers and stuff, he's like, I'm keeping an eye on his weapons to see what he's doing with his weapons. And Moxi did have a hand on his sword. And then the pirate crew starts to disperse. And they move to the side, they move and they make a straight line because their captain is coming. Tall, lean, muscular, dark crimson tiefling with bright emerald eyes and a long, big, dark ponytail comes slowly striding out through his crew that's passing like the Red Sea. And he comes walking out and he looks at Moxi. And Moxi just looks at Sebastian Thor, the Bloody Reaver, and He looks the same, but older and stronger, but the same. And suddenly Moxi is very aware of how much he wishes he did not look how he looks right now. With the badly attached eye patch and the scars from the acid burn all over his face and the crazy rainbow hair that his mom hates and the sickly pale skin, and he suddenly thinks, he's not even gonna know who I am. And the two tieflings lock eyes and the blue meets the emerald green. And the Bloody Reaver looks at Moxi Brethren and says, "My horizon?" And Moxi tightens his grip on the sword at his back. And he takes a step forward and he says, "Land ahoy." And Sebastian Thor takes a step closer to him and says, "Moxi?" And he starts to reach out, but then stops himself and holds himself back and just says, "You're here." And all Moxi can think to say, as he stands there ready to kill this guy, it just tumbles out of his mouth and he says, "Why did you leave?" And Sebastian blinks and looks down at his feet, and the captain sort of shuffles his boot and looks back up and says, "I had to go with my father. We were headed east, you were headed west. I had to stay with my family, you had to stay with yours. I had to go." And Moxi just stares at him, gripping his sword so tight his knuckles are going whiter and whiter. And he stands his ground and he asks him, "Why didn't you tell me?" And Sebastian says, "Well, would it have made any difference?" And Moxi, hating himself for it, but knowing it to be true, shakes his head and says, "No." And then the silence is broken as a woman's voice comes shrieking over the air, echoing all around the two ships. "Do it!" Moxi blinks and looks around, but he can't see his mother anywhere. The devils do not look surprised by this at all. They're all still stood on the ship watching. The rest of the pirate crew are gripping their weapons and looking around for anyone else, another assailant, and the party members are staring fixedly at Moxi and the sword in his hand. And the Bloody Reaver says, "I'm sorry." And with his free hand, Moxi reaches out, mirroring the way Sebastian had done it mere moments before, and he too stops himself halfway towards the other tiefling. And he says, "Did you really love me?" And then his mother's voice echoes out again, louder this time. "Do it! Do it now!" And then the Bloody Reaver takes Moxi's hand. The once ocean blue fingers and deep crimson ones automatically lace together. And Sebastian replied, "I never stopped." Immediately, Moxi takes the first full breath he'd taken in 5 years. And despite the world rocking and swaying with the ship, everything seems to right itself. He feels that spark, that lurch deep inside him that he felt the first day he met Sebastian. Sebastian's free hand comes up and it just runs its way through all the colours of his hair, and the Bloody Reaver smiles, admiring them in the sunlight. And they are so close now they can practically hear the other's heartbeat. As Moxi breathes a deep breath of Sebastian's scent, the oh so homely smell of just salt water and rum and a slight hint of spices, his mother's voice rings out again, so much louder than before, like a bell, making his head burn and ache. "Do it! Do it now!" But to Moxi, it's a million miles away. He feels the tip of Sebastian's nose just brush his own, and the Bloody Reaver murmurs under his breath, "My horizon." The Bloody Reaver's hand moved out of Moxi's hair and down onto his cheek, and slowly his thumb found its way to nestle in the corner of Moxi's mouth. And the now pale tiefling knew that he couldn't move. If he moved, it would be over. If he moved, it would end. And he found himself wishing that Sebastian was anywhere but here. Far, far away somewhere he was not, and he could never, ever hurt him. "Moxi?" The word brushed his lips, and Moxi smiled. Seb? Another jolt of pain and heat burst through Moxi's brain. Do it! His mother screams. Seb, I need to tell you. But the Bloody Reaver shushes him. I know, my Horizon, I know. Moxi tries to tell him, no, I was sent here. I don't care. They were too close now. Much too close. Everything in Moxi's vision was a blur, and it was all shining, shimmering emerald. And all he could feel were their heartbeats merging together and the brush of their eyelashes as they were so, so close. They were here, at last. But Moxi needed to explain why. He needed to tell him. He needed to warn him. Seb needed to know. And without thinking, without pausing for breath, Moxi closed the minuscule gap and pressed their lips together. The Bloody Reaver let out a harsh catch of his breath, but then he was kissing Moxi back. And Moxi was tugging himself in closer, digging his nails into the fabric of Seb's shirt, hanging on to every piece of him, willing to just stay in that moment. And then there was fire. It ripped and clawed its way through the decking and made a circle tight around Moxi's feet. It pushed Sebastian back, the force of the flames licking upwards, forcing the tieflings apart. Moxi yelled in surprise and pain as these great tongues of flame imprisoned him, encasing him, closing his arms tight to his sides and clambering up, covering his mouth and his face. Sebastian tried to reach through to grab him, but then everything went pitch black. And it was at that point that, out of character, I was pretty sure I was dead. The rest of the party, in and out of character, were pretty sure I was dead. And they had to do the rest of that session without me. They managed to explain to Sebastian what had been going on, and he was completely messed up by the idea and just told them to get off his ship and leave. And they left, going back to the mainland, and went back to the keep. And yeah, tried to find another adventure to do, because they couldn't call Moxi back. They had no idea where, they had a vague idea where he might be, but when they tried to scry, they got nothing. When they tried divine intervention, so yeah, Moxi was considered dead. However, without Moxi, there would be no story. So let's all pack our bags and go on a fun day trip down to the 9 Hells and see what happened when Moxi got dragged back down by his mum.